Hi everyone, welcome back to our overview of the Enneagram. This week we are going to be talking about type 2 on the Enneagram, which is the helper. I'm going to begin by sharing what a healthy 2 might look like, an average 2, and then an unhealthy 2. So a few different traits. Healthy 2s are very able to name their own needs and their own feelings without fear, which I think sounds like an amazing gift. Healthy 2s tend to be generous in their love and their care for others. Healthy 2s have good boundaries. They have a sense of what is theirs to carry and what is not theirs to carry. Average 2s have a tendency to think that their needs threaten the stability of relationships that they're in, so they may not share their needs as readily. Average 2s are generous, but subconsciously they might expect a return on that generosity. And average 2s know themselves most primarily in their relationships with other people. Unhealthy 2s have a tendency to be codependent. They will accept anything because their desire to be loved is what comes first and foremost. So by accept anything, what I mean is in relationship, they might accept appreciation or neediness or companionship or just utility in exchange for love because the desire to be loved is so strong. Unhealthy 2s will also try to learn to love by sometimes playing the martyr role. So a tendency to give and give and give of yourself and feel like you maybe are not receiving anything back. You are just giving. We've talked a bit about the deadly sins for all of the Enneagram numbers that we've discussed. And for 2s, the deadly sin is pride. That maybe sounds a little bit contradictory given what I just shared about the healthy and average and unhealthy 2s and their deep need for relationship. But underneath that pride is really a deep-seated fear. And I think that mostly is a fear of rejection, especially rejection if they ask for what they need directly. 2s need to be needed. They rely on other people often to boost their self-worth. 2s appear to be selfless because they believe that others are more needy than them and that they alone know what they need and what everyone else needs better than them. I know that this sounds really negative and it's not at all meant to be taken that way. Just a description of some of the character traits that each of our numbers have to work through and to figure out as we are all on this journey together towards health and wholeness. So deadly sin, pride.
Well, before we go there, one of the things I think that's important to note about 2 and where we're starting at today is we've now shifted triad.
I was just going to say,
Right?
I'm just looking that up.
Thank you for adding that.
8, 9, and 1 focus in what we would consider like the gut and focus a lot on what we're doing. And now we're making the shift to a triad that includes numbers 2, 3, and 4, which is the heart triad. And so this is where feeling really comes into play. Like there's similar to how anger was played out differently with 8, 9, and 1, the way in which feelings are expressed will be a lot of the focus, starting here with 2 and as we move into 3 and 4.
Perfect. That's so helpful. Thank you. So let's share a few of the different traits of 2s, and feel free to jump in as some of this connects with y'all. So one trait of 2s is that they have this incredible ability to make people feel safe and comfortable immediately, as soon as they meet them. 2s tend to be non-judgmental and accepting. They are the people who walk into a room and they are the first ones to come over and ask, how are you doing? What do you need? Can I refill your coffee for you? How can I help you out today? So they just have this amazing ability to make you feel safe. 2s have a tendency to give away their power. If self-esteem is tied to other people, it is much easier to allow it to fluctuate based on what other people say to you or maybe say about you, what words or actions are shared. And so 2s have a tendency to tie their self-esteem to the way that other people perceive them and the way other people interact with them. 2s also have an amazing ability to sense. and then fulfill the needs of other people. So twos are the folks who can like almost instinctively know what it is that you need before you even need it. They will show up at your door with a casserole. They will give you a call and drop off a gift card for you. They are incredible connectors. That, though, can get really tricky for twos because maybe just underneath the surface is an expectation, unspoken, that they assume other people are going to do the same thing for them, that people are going to reciprocate. Right, but not everybody in the world is a two, so not everybody is thinking the same thing or acting in the same way. So that's something to pay attention to for twos for sure.
And part of the tricky piece with that too, I think, is they're so good at seeing what other people need. And there's that expectation that it'll come back to them, but also they are not good at accepting what they need. So it's kind of this fine line and this dance of like, okay, I kind of expect reciprocity, but at the same time, I'm not good at accepting. And so, kind of walking this tightrope almost.
Yes, definitely. One final trait that I'll share today is that twos have a tendency towards martyrdom, which means that twos will give and give and give. And then again, it's so easy to allow yourself to be resentful when that giving isn't reciprocated, or to be fearful, to allow that fear that your relationship is broken, that other people don't care about you as much as you care about them, to come back and kind of haunt you. So a real need for twos to be aware of what their limits and boundaries are, which for many of the numbers is something that is important to pay attention to and something to work towards. A childhood wound. So twos, when they were growing up, probably heard this either expressed verbally or perhaps it was an unspoken thing. But that was that having or expressing your needs will somehow lead to humiliation or rejection. So twos as children tended to know what other people's needs were, but maybe not their own. And they had a tendency to try to fulfill everybody else's needs so that nobody would be rejected and that they wouldn't be rejected. Twos were also probably really independent early on as children. They were likely the people who were first in class volunteering, who were being helpful, who were raising their hand and making sure that things got done. So that's something maybe to pay attention to as you think back on your own childhood, as you're kind of discerning what number fits best for you.
And part of that is, part of that expectation and what they heard growing up is why sometimes twos are afraid to ask for help. Because if they ask for help and it's not reciprocated or it's not delivered, it can lead to a lot of pain. And when we're talking in a feeling triad, to feel pain, no one wants to feel pain. And so to feel pain becomes a very uncomfortable spot and makes people kind of want to push away from that.
Absolutely. Yes. So twos also have a real awareness of difference. And I think that that's really a gift that twos can bring to the world. They can tell the difference between their own self-interest and altruistic giving, and have a real desire in their work towards being healthy and moving away from like giving and helping other people in a way that is purely self-interested, and working and moving more towards giving from an altruistic perspective. So not just giving because I'm going to get something from this, whether that something is like a word of thanks or praise or a boost in self-esteem, but giving because giving is the right thing to do in many situations. I can move on to what our healing message is for twos, unless Pastor Corey, you have some other things to add?
Have we talked about the wings?
No, that would be great. Yeah.
Twos with the one wing are concerned about doing things properly. They want to be seen as dependable and responsible. Twos with a three wing are more ambitious, image conscious, and competitive. Extroverted and sometimes seductive, like the three, who's the performer. They are more concerned about relationships and connections than twos with one wing. And then twos in stress take on the characteristic behaviors of unhealthy eights, where they become demanding and controlling, either directly or manipulatively. And when they're in their security, when they're feeling secure, twos move to the healthy side of four, where they're okay with not having to pretend that they love everybody.
Yeah.
I also read that twos are very fine to be second in command, because they know that that's where the actual work gets done. So that's where the helping piece can be.
Yeah.
I think another important thing about understanding twos is because twos are understanding the needs of others, it's easy to overcommit. And when we overcommit, it can be really difficult to follow through. And so depending on where in the stages of health, stress, and security, follow through can become something that can become a greater challenge, depending on how they're trying to meet the needs of others instead of focusing on their own needs.
I think one of the things that really interests me about twos is that most often, very often, women are self-identify, or are typed as number two. And I think that has a lot to do with, like, sociologically, culturally, how women's roles are perceived. And very often, women are asked to, or expected to give and give and give of themselves. And that fits very well within the construct and the identity of a two. And so I would be really curious to know, like, I know this is not an answerable question, but if we, like, pulled ourselves out of some of these constructs that society has created for us, how accurate is it that only 6% of men identify as a type 2 on the Enneagram? Like, surely there are more, right? But it's just really fascinating to me that our cultural water that we swim in is so that women tend to more identify with the role of the helper, the one who gives and who loves and who cares for other people.
Yeah, I find that in 8-2, when we were talking about 8 a while back, it's seen as a strength in a male role, but in a female role, it's seen as a not so nice characteristics, because they seem bossy and the men and the women are doing the exact same things, but it's perceived as a strength in a male and a limiting factor in a woman, which is society. So yeah, it'd be interesting to pull it out.
Yeah, without patriarchy.
And kind of touching on the relationship aspect, right? Because so much of this is about relationships. One of the things that's interesting with a two is so often a two is seeking to make those relationships. They go in with the intention of being in relationship with this person. And I think what's tricky is not every connection is intended to be a relationship that maybe the two might desire. And so just recognizing that, sometimes those connections are simply just a connection in that point in time, and it doesn't extend to anything more. Because when you're so into being in a relationship with each other, that can be a really difficult thing to come to terms with sometimes.
So I think one of the invitations for twos to consider as you're working through the Enneagram and in your own life is, in your time with God, your time set aside in prayer, to ask, who am I when no one needs me? To ask that as a contemplative question. And then the healing message that we want to leave twos with is short and simple and to the point, which is, you are wanted. You are wanted by God and your community.